On a rainy night, the police pull over a truck and find a suspiciously injured woman behind the wheel, who claims to have forgotten her ID. The other officers check the back of the truck and are surprised to find it filled with dogs. Shortly after, a phone call wakes up psychiatrist Evelyn. She has to leave her son with her mother and go to the police station to assess whether the detainee should be sent to prison or a mental institution. As Evelyn enters the room and finds the driver sitting in a wheelchair with a fresh wound on his back, when the person turns around, Evelyn realizes that the individual is not a woman, but a man wearing makeup and a wig named Doug, who explains that the dogs in the truck are his children. Evelyn briefly introduces herself as a divorced mother with a 9-month-old, then expresses her interest in hearing Doug's story. Doug recalls his traumatic childhood growing up in a religious redneck family. His father, Mike, raised dogs for fights, often starving them in the days leading up to a fight to make them more aggressive. Mike was abusive and brutal, never hesitating to beat his wife. Doug's brother, Richie, tried to gain favor with their father to avoid his wrath. Doug felt a stronger connection with the dogs than his own family, often spending time lying next to the cages, petting them, and sometimes secretly feeding them. One day, Richie caught him and informed Mike, who confronted Doug and demanded an answer if he loved the dogs more than his family. Doug responded affirmatively, and Mike was enraged. He dragged Doug and threw him into the cage with the dogs, declaring it to be his new residence. The dogs immediately came closer and comforted him. From that point on, Doug spent his days in the cage, enduring even the cold winters, surviving on whatever food scraps his father threw at him. Soon, his mother decided to run away because she was pregnant and didn't want the baby to experience the same tragedy. She left him some canned food and instructed him to hide it before leaving. Doug tells Evelyn that he doesn't resent her for this. Sometime later, Richie hung a sign on the cage with the words, "In the name of God," accusing Doug of being the reason their mother left. However, from Doug's perspective, the words appeared as Dogman, bringing a smile to his face. In the morning, Evelyn returns home and learns from her mother that her ex-husband, who's not allowed near their house by court order, is nearby and wants to see their son. Doug reminisces about a scene when he was at his abandoned building, visited by a young man named Juan, who brought a rescued puppy and asked for Doug's help. Juan explained that Martha, the local laundromat owner who always did Doug's laundry, was constantly being harassed by a gang led by El Verdugo. The gang demanded protection money from store owners every week. Martha couldn't afford to pay anymore, so she was forced to sell some beloved family belongings. Doug reassured Juan not to worry because he would take care of it. Then, Doug dressed as a woman in a black morning dress and waited across from the gang's hangout. At his command, a small dog ran inside with a phone in its mouth and delivered it to El Verdugo. As the phone rang, El Verdugo picked up while Doug sent a big dog to enter and bite onto El Verdugo's groin, causing him pain. Doug warned him to leave Martha alone, or he would allow the dog to tighten its grip. El Verdugo had no choice but to agree. As soon as the dogs left the bar, El Verdugo sent his men after them. Later, Evelyn arrives at Doug's home where the police are gathering evidence. She sees bodies and bullet holes scattered everywhere. After grabbing a few items, she returns to the cell, where Doug has already cleaned up. He thanks Evelyn for bringing his belongings and continues his story. Doug spent months confined in the cage, educating himself with women's magazines hidden in the crevices, likely left by his mother. One day, one of the dogs gave birth to puppies, so Doug hid them from his family. Unfortunately, Richie noticed them and once again ran off to tell his father, who stormed out with a gun intending to kill the puppies. Doug blocked his way to the cage and began yelling at him while the dogs barked and growled along. As Doug protested, the gun went off, knocking him to the ground and causing him to lose a finger. Fearing the situation escalating, Richie took his father back inside and tossed Doug a handkerchief. Unable to move, Doug managed to bandage his hand and put the finger in a bag. He then showed the dog a picture of a police car from the magazine cover and instructed it to run out through the hole with the bag in its mouth. The dog ran through the streets until it eventually found a police car and successfully attracted the attention of the officers. Soon after, the police surrounded Doug's house and found him in the cage. They arrested Mike and Richie. Since that day, Doug lost the ability to walk normally, as the bullet ricocheted off the wall and lodged in his spine. The doctors chose not to remove it to avoid further damage, as any movement could dislodge the bullet and potentially kill him. Doug explains to Evelyn that he can only walk a bit with the help of leg braces, and even standing for a few seconds poses a risk. Mike was sentenced to 20 years but committed suicide just 2 weeks later. Richie received a 12-year sentence but was released after 8 years for good behavior. On the day he got out, several dogs waited for him outside the prison and they chased him down the street. As Richie tried to escape through an alley, the dogs attacked him, leading to his death. After being discharged from the hospital, Doug was sent to an orphanage where he struggled to make friends. He spent most of his time reading in the library until he met Salma, a drama instructor at the facility. Salma introduced him to Shakespeare and the world of theater, and they performed many small plays for the kids. Doug especially enjoyed Salma teaching him the art of makeup, allowing him to become anyone he wanted to be. Salma brought him happiness and a sense of belonging, becoming his first and only love. Unfortunately, one day Salma left to pursue her acting dreams. Over the following years, Doug collected every news article about her in a scrapbook. As an adult, he studied online and earned a bachelor's degree in biological sciences. He then found a job at a dog shelter. Many years later, Doug finally went to see one of Salma's performances on Broadway and visited her backstage. He didn't expect her to remember him, but she immediately recognized him and was thrilled to see him. When Doug gave her the scrapbook, Salma loved the gift and thanked him with a kiss. Just as Doug was about to confess his feelings for her, the director came in and revealed that Salma was already married to him and expecting a child. Heartbroken, Doug left and returned to the dog shelter. Overwhelmed with emotion, Doug began yelling and pounding his legs, even standing up to hit the cages to release his frustration. The dogs barked along with him. As he fell to the floor, one dog managed to open the latch, allowing all the dogs to come out and surround him, licking and comforting him. In a symbolic gesture of moving forward, Doug cut his hair. Soon after, 2 government authorities informed him that they were closing the shelter due to budget cuts. Doug argued that the shelter relied on donations, and the only municipal funding received was the building itself. The officials then confessed that the site was being sold to a developer for profit. Doug was given until Monday to move out, and the dogs might find new shelters. When Monday came, authorities found the building empty as Doug had moved into the abandoned college building with his dogs, where he spent time reading Shakespeare to them. Doug soon faced a challenge when he needed money to support his dog family. Despite his efforts to find a job, he encountered rejection everywhere because of his wheelchair. One day, while applying for a job at a club, he was immediately captivated by the rehearsal of drag queens. He expressed his desire to perform, but the owner pointed out that audiences might not be interested in a performer in a wheelchair. Doug stood up to prove he could perform for an entire song, and the drag queens advocated for him, convincing the owner to give him a chance. Backstage, he prepared for his performance and even removed his leg braces. Other performers helped him onto the stage and supported him on his feet. As the curtains rose, Doug began singing a French song, stunning and moving everyone in the audience. At the end, everyone applauded and cheered for him. He used up the last of his strength to remain standing until the curtains closed, and the others rushed to support him before he fell. From then on, he became a regular performer at the club. Evelyn asked if he had any other jobs, and Doug admitted that he also helps people by matching them with the right dog for companionship and protection. One day while he was cooking, the dogs would bring him any ingredient on demand, and this made Doug realize he could use the dogs for other purposes, what he called fair redistribution of wealth. The small dog would sneak into wealthy people's houses and then let the other dogs in, and together they would search the space for valuables they could carry. Everything went smoothly until a wealthy woman reported a theft. The insurance company dispatched investigator Ackerman to investigate the matter, and the woman provided him with the security footage. As Ackerman watched the footage, he noticed a dog coming out of the house with something in its mouth. Recalling similar incidents from before, Ackerman requested to check the footage as well. He discovered the same dogs and found a recording of a parked van with a man in a wheelchair. He investigated the license plate and found Doug's profile. Instead of turning him over to the police, Ackerman decided to attend Douglas's performance at the club. After the performance, he pretended to be Doug's fan and invited him to dinner, but Doug refused. Ackerman followed Doug, and as he entered the old building with a gun, the corgi immediately warned Doug, who instructed his dogs to prepare for the intruder. Ackerman pointed his gun at Doug, demanding the stolen jewelry. After retrieving the box, Doug invited Ackerman to stay for dinner, and he agreed. As Ackerman let his guard down, Doug ordered his dogs to kill him. Doug continues to tell Evelyn about what led to his arrest. Last night, Doug was dressed up as Marilyn Monroe and listening to her records when El Verdugo and his gang threatened Juan to reveal the location of Doug's abandoned building. After Juan served his purpose, they killed him. Startled by the gunshot, Doug immediately ordered his dogs to prepare for war and grabbed a shotgun before entering a secret corridor. After the gang spread out around the building, Doug's clever dogs led them into traps. A small dog ran into a hole, and a gangster followed, only to find a big dog had dragged him in and killed him. Another gangster followed a dog into a bathroom with a wet floor, and the dog released a cable to electrocute him. Yet another gangster, chasing a small dog, fell into a covered pit trap. When his buddy came to check on him, a dog pushed him down. Doug then shot both of them. One gangster followed a Chihuahua to a spot where Doug shot him through the wall, while some were simply mauled to death. El Verdugo's gang brought him a machine gun, and Doug opened fire through the wall, killing several of them. El Verdugo was the only one left. He shot back, injuring Doug's back before he could dodge. Doug fell to the ground and managed to crawl back to his chair while El Verdugo continued to shoot, riddling the walls with bullets until he ran out of ammunition. He then found Doug and attempted to kill him, but realized he was out of bullets. Seizing the opportunity, Doug's dogs attacked and killed him. Later, while being arrested in the police car, Doug nodded to his dogs and they all scattered away. After Doug finishes his story, Evelyn asks him why he chose to confide in her. Doug reveals that they both share pain. After Evelyn leaves, he smokes by the window, smiling as he hears a dog howl, knowing his dogs have never left him. Then he starts shaving, removes his leg brace, and dresses up in a nice suit. Meanwhile, the dogs enter the station and frighten the officer, causing him to pass out. They take the keys and bring them to Doug's door. He escapes and gets out of the wheelchair. As a true artist at heart, he prepares for his last act, walking toward the church. He stops in the shadow of the cross, expressing a desire to face death in the eyes of God before falling to the ground, confessing his sins as he passes away. His dogs encircle him, saying goodbye to him forever. At Evelyn's house, as she looks out the window, she sees the Doberman lying in front of the house, protecting her from her violent ex-husband.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our channel for more videos.